Welcome to Influential Entrepreneurs, bringing you interviews with elite business leaders and experts, sharing tips and strategies for elevating your business to the next level. Here's your host, Mike Saunders.
Well, hello and welcome to this episode of Influential Entrepreneurs. This is Mike Saunders with Marketing Huddle, and today we're privileged to have with us Mark Sephton, who is a personal mentor to entrepreneurs. Mark, welcome to the program.
Mike, great to join you and your audience. Really excited to be able to share my story and see where this takes us.
Yeah, I love, recently it seems like I read more and more of business books and articles and listen to podcasts that talks about the value and benefit of mentorship. And I think that it sounds pretty cliche to say, just get a mentor, or how do you get a mentor? But I love how you focus, and that is what you do. You're not a, personal development coach. Well, that's kind of segmented, but you're a personal mentor to entrepreneurs. So tell us about your entrepreneurial journey and what led you to this stage of your development in your career.
Well, I think my grandfather had a big kind of say or impact, I guess, on my entrepreneurial itch. And I guess I used to watch him ever so closely in terms of how he articulated himself and how he came up with different ideas. He was very much a trader. Very much an old school entrepreneur in terms of could spot a bargain and was able to negotiate and wheel and deal. And he dealt with fruit and vegetables and insurance and jewelry. And I guess my first foray into entrepreneurship was when I used to join him on rounds at like 5 a.m. in the morning when I was about 10 years old. And I would go and deliver fruit and vegetables to the local restaurant, pubs and hotels. And I just got to see, my grandfather, how he articulated himself, what a wonderful person he was to really engage with people. And it really dawned on me that the greatest, I guess, attribute for any business is their reputation. And he was so good with people. I think, entrepreneurship, very much is finding a solution to a problem. And so my grandfather was really good at kind of doing that, and alongside his ability to build a rapport and have a reputation which delivered, I think really had an impact on me. Both my parents worked, they had jobs, they didn't really show necessarily any entrepreneurial flair, but certainly for my grandparents, and my grandma's still alive now and still involved, in entrepreneurship. I think, they really kind of were the catalyst for me, and it really made me curious. And I've always had a great ability to make money and solve problems, which I think are two really important attributes to anybody who's wanting to cut their teeth on their own. And I guess it's made me curious, and so I always had that itch to, have my own business. And at the age of 15, I didn't really like school, and I struggled a little. I always learned by doing. Our systems are a little different, I think, Mike, than in the US. But at 15, I completed my GCSEs, and I could have gone to college and then on to university, but I decided to jump straight into employment and actually took a job within retail, and I worked in retail and hospitality for about 10 years, which is obviously in line with my own gifts around getting the best out of people and creating an environment where people feel special and creating memories and creating theatre. Hospitality and retail are those front-facing industries, which in a lot of ways are kind of thankless industries. But I kind of cut my teeth, I guess, around leadership, developing people, and I was leading large amounts of teams through the hospitality industry. And that's really when I started to kind of pivot and look and see what else was out there. Had an opportunity to invest in a utility company and learned some key business principles from that, and then realized the greatest place to invest was in myself. And so I started doing some leadership training, and I got a diploma in life coaching and some business consultancy, and kind of took the bits that really resonated with me. And I ended up creating my own hospitality consultancy business, utilizing my experience, but able to break through and target, some independent restaurant, pub and hotel owners of how I could really help them and assist them and grow their business. And that's kind of how it all began.
Yeah, I love how the journey seems to be really focused on, family and learning lessons from your grandparents. And I know I always enjoy reading the old books, the Napoleon Hills. I'm literally right now halfway through reading the Laws of Success again.
Mm-hmm.
And if you know that book, it's about as thick as a phone book, and it's a really wonderful book because you see these are people from back in the 20s and 40s that are really talking about things that they really didn't know much of at the point. Right now we can read them and go, oh yes, we should have a positive outlook on life. Well, back then they didn't know the true impact of what that would be. They just had seen some hints of what that would do. And so I think today we hear that and we kind of take it for granted. So I really love those old principles that still are true today. And I know that you on your website, you've got a really interesting statement that just jumps out at me, and I think I'd like to go deeper on that. You said it's hard to see the picture when you are in the frame. And I think that is just really profound because, I've heard it said the same kind of statement, you can't see the forest for the trees because you're in the middle of the forest and all you see is, trees, but you don't see the whole forest. Well, it's hard to see the picture when you are in the frame. Can you talk a little bit more about that and how you work in mentoring and coaching clients with that concept?
Yeah, I mean, it is a nice, clear metaphor of the fact that, sometimes we need a fresh perspective and sometimes it's the way somebody else thinks and operates, which is really the missing puzzle. I know that we spend a lot of time, and the importance of being focused on something, but it's really hard to be both focused and aware at the same time. And I'm a big believer in being focused on what's ahead of you and having a goal and achieving it. But I also believe in having the right balance of being aware of other opportunities and other people that actually, if you join forces with them, you can actually move forward quicker or expand your own business by having a different arm to what you do. Now, one of the things that I kind of started to look at was after a few years of being in mentoring and listening to what some of the conversations I was having with clients, it became apparent that there was a number of topics which seemed to always arise, and that's when I started to create a GPS system, which is a little bit like an internal MRI, which helps reveal blind spots, efficiencies and deficiencies. And it's through these findings that I'm able to really then help clients with where they are currently, and it looks at their behaviors, it looks at their outlook and why they believe what they do, and it really gets clear on actually what are some of the things that are really causing them to self-sabotage and prevent them from moving forward. So the sense of, it's hard to see the picture when you're in your frame is really to, maybe just pause for a moment and actually be aware of what's going on inside of you as well as what's going around you. And so I think, with mentoring, being able to be objective and listen and actually have somebody kind of there for you, because I get it. Entrepreneurs were all working, all the hours that God sends us. But I really believe, Mike, that sometimes in order to get ahead, we've got to stop. I'm not massive into Formula One, but I think it's a great analogy of the fact that they schedule pit stops in order to ensure that the vehicle is operating at peak performance. Now, everybody does that, and you could think, well, I'm not going to stop. I'm just going to keep going because if I don't stop, I'm going to have the advantage. But what happens is then obviously you get a blown tire or there's problems with the oil, and actually it causes a longer delay than what it would have been if you actually stopped and paused and really tapped into the self-awareness of what we each need in order to keep moving forward and really creating the life that we want.
Yeah, that's a huge realization, and it reminds me of something that I saw just recently on a TV show where it's a show called Designated Survivor, and it's the current sitting president was talking to the previous president, and he was analyzing his time in the office in the first few months, and he made a really impactful statement, I feel, and it has so many applications to personal or business life. He says, you are reacting, not leading. In other words, in a business sense, that leader, that CEO, that VP, that executive, they need to be leading their team and their department, and many times they get caught up in putting out fires, and they're reacting to things. They're not taking the lead and charting that course. So I would suspect that you would say that that has a lot of application, too, when you're mentoring your entrepreneurs. You need to quit reacting to things and putting out fires and take that time to lead your business, lead your team. And it's like Michael Gerber says in his book, The E-Myth, you need to take time to work on your business and not in your business.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, very true.
So what do you find is when an entrepreneur first engages your service, what are some of the first things you're looking for as opportunities to dive in and help them with maybe mistakes or gaps or problems you're seeing? What are some of the common ones that you see out there?
Well, it's interesting. Often people come to me with what they believe is the problem, but then when I have a few sessions and I take them through, the GPS actually reveals something different, and what they thought was the problem was really the symptom. So I always find that really interesting. You know, I think it's good to be self-aware and kind of know where you're at, but equally I think sometimes people miss it and they kind of have an idea of what they think the problem is, but then actually when you look at the bigger picture, it really isn't the problem. So I think, you know, for me, I guess the one thing that I kind of look for is I'm really looking for them to really convince me as to why they were put on this earth, because I think before you move to the left or the right and spend hours and days and months, you know, on a project which really necessarily doesn't fulfill you or isn't in line with your own purpose and mission, for me, I'd really like to be convinced by them that the area in which they're going in is the one that's really serving them and going to shape them and actually really fulfill them. So that's something that I really kind of want to look at the very get-go.
Yeah, I think too many times we all get distracted with, you know, shiny objects or new opportunities, and having that focus, like you were saying earlier, is so critical. So how do you feel that focus relates to productivity? Because I know a lot of entrepreneurs feel that they can handle 2 or 3 or 4 things at once, you know, multitasking. Where does focus and productivity fit in?
Well, I think, you know, focus is one of those things that if you have got 3 or 4 things going, you're really diluting, you know, your attention to be able to achieve a desired result. Now, as a personality, I love being fluid and spontaneous, but I also have daily habits that I insist on, not because I necessarily enjoy them, but because I know they're good for me. And I think success often is doing the things that, you know, aren't necessarily, you know, enjoyable or fun, but they're fundamentals. They're the bread and butter of anything that you want to achieve. And so for me, if you are not progressing, it will never feel like you're really achieving anything. And for me, I think, you know, people, they tend to be so focused on waiting for the perfect conditions and environment, and they kind of stress themselves with, you know, creating the perfect life. But the magic and the freedom happens when they really focus on creating a life that is around progression. And I think when you have that focus and you are intentional and you're able to deliver over and over, even when you may not feel like it, I think a lot of the success lays there in those key habits of continually, day after day, doing over and over the things that are really paramount to your own ability to move forward.
You know, that makes me think of the concept that achieving a goal is wonderful, but it's the person and process you become in achieving that goal that's the most important. Because when you get to that goal achievement and you look around and say, now what? You know, but if you are doing what you're saying, which is, here are some of the basic fundamental skills and techniques in my personal life, my business life, that I must do to get to this goal. Well, then once you hit that goal and you now have those habits formed in your daily or weekly routines, then getting to the next goal is, that much easier because you're focusing on doing the right things. Can you think of some examples of some of those habits that you see entrepreneurs doing that you're working with that you would recommend them do? So what are some examples of those habits?
I mean, often if I'm encouraging other entrepreneurs to create habits, I need to be doing them myself. So it's kind of twofold. I think for me, I'm a big believer in when it comes to business, it's about relationships and cultivating those relationships and those networks. So one of my weekly goals is to meet 2 new people a week. And when I say meet, it's really to engage with them on a one-to-one. And I might do this through, going through a networking event where there may be, 20, 30 people in a room, and I'm just looking for 1 or 2 or I feel like I have a bit of a rapport with or I have some intrigue with, and then I prioritize them. Or it might be that I use social media in order to be able to connect and really engage. So I think, there's certain things in my life where I'm really intentional in terms of cultivating the relationships, because I'm a big believer that often if I reflect on where I am, a lot of that has come through my ability to relate to people, to be likable, to connect. And it's often, I'm sure you agree, Mike, that it's often who you know in order to be able to leverage and expand and I guess express yourself in a different way. So little habits like that you're intentional, for me, are really important to the lifeblood of any business. You've got to have an audience. You've got to have, a product that actually people want. You've got to find a solution to a problem, and habits that are cultivated around relationship development and connection, and that human connection, for me, really rank highly in terms of what I encourage my clients to do. We have so many free platforms like Instagram Stories and Snapchat and Facebook Live to be able to really engage with people, that I think, that needs to be a daily habit, that we look to serve people and look for engagement. Don't let it just be about you just vomiting over people in terms of what you do and how wonderful you are. It needs to be something that really serves people, engages them, helps them think beyond themselves. So there'd be some of the habits that I'd be really looking at with my clients, is to really get an understanding of who they're talking to, who they're relating to. It's people at grassroots level that are really going to, be the difference between whether we're in business for a year or for 5. And I guess I play the long game in terms of relationships. I honestly believe that none of us have any right to sell to anybody that we don't have a rapport or relationship with. And that's why I think people like Apple do such a great job of kind of managing that process from first impression all the way through. It's always interactive and supportive. Their Apple stores are so engaging. I don't know of many, if any, other shops that have so many advisors that are at the ready for you to be able to really engage with their products. It's just a real smart way of doing business.
Yeah, I just couldn't agree more. In fact, have you read the book by Malcolm Gladwell, The Tipping Point?
No, I haven't actually, but I've heard of it, but I haven't read it.
Just this morning, literally, it's interesting you would say that, because I posted in a Facebook group I'm a member of a snippet from that book, because I read a book summary. And, of course, his book, Tipping Point, gets a lot of references because it's just such a neat mindset. But he said something interesting that relates right exactly to what you just said with relationships. And he said, connectors are exactly the same as us. We have friends and we have connections, and we have friends at work. We have friends at, our personal lives. So connectors are the same, but they operate in highly significant sets. Their sets contain people of influence, of power, or of authority. They contain the people who can influence the tipping point of your product. Connectors are expert in getting close to those we need to get close to. So the takeaway there is, who are connectors that we can reach out to develop a relationship with, not give me access to your network, but truly develop rapport and a relationship. And it's like Bob Burke says in his book, The Go-Giver, we need to be cultivating those networks of relationships of giving and providing value, and then you're in position to get some of those introductions because you're developing the relationship. I think that's just such a key point.
Yep, I agree.
Do you find that there's something specific that you would advise a client to do in cultivating those types of relationships? Because you have to take time to do that, but what are some of the habits that you would recommend in accomplishing that?
I think, John Maxwell, he talks a lot about being intentional, and I really, can really resonate with how he kind of lives and how he goes about things. And I think, for me, regardless of what it is you do in life, I think you have to be intentional and realize that relationships are work, and you've got to put the time in to really make yourself accessible. I think it was Zig Ziglar who said, if you help people get what they want, you'll always have what you want. You don't do that in a way to manipulate. You do that, it's like a law, like the gravity, like law of gravity. If I throw a pen in the air, it's going to fall to the ground. I think the byproduct of cultivating relationships is something that we should all do. And so if you are wanting to increase, I guess, the ability to prospect to a large number of people, I think, you've really got to look at how you can serve and encourage. I believe that encouragement is something that doesn't necessarily cost you anything. But if you come alongside somebody and really look at who they are and really see their potential and their value, and you're able to kind of encourage them within that, I think encouragement is such a powerful source of energy that if it's done in an authentic way, because you can certainly tell the difference between those who mean it, genuinely, and those who are just after something. I think, when you have that encouragement and you look to encourage people and you commend people and you celebrate other people's success. I mean, I've always enjoyed seeing other people flourish, Mike, because I've always believed that my race isn't against you or anybody next to me. It's really about what I'm capable of. And I think, when you take your eyes off yourself and actually start to really encourage and support other people, that's really when I feel like relationships are deepened. And if there's people that I really love, I have no problem helping them and sharing referral and recommending them when I really believe in who they are and when I've experienced, their product or service, then it's a no-brainer. But it does take time. It does take time.
And it takes focus time, not just a drive-by, clicking like on one of their Facebook posts and thinking that's building a relationship. So I think that's excellent advice. So wrapping up here, what is the best way that people can learn more about you? I know you've got a couple books out, so how can people learn more about your services and maybe connect with you?
Great. Well, my website is marksephton.com, and it has all my social media links. And as you said, I've got 2 books out. I just released my latest one, Plot Twist, which I launched in February. I'm very accessible. I love engaging with people. I love making time, and if people write me emails or tweet me or send me messages, then I'm very receptive and love to respond, because I'm a big believer that we all started with nothing, and we all need help, and we all need encouragement, and we all need guidance, at times. And I think, it's important that we continue as entrepreneurs, that we stick together, especially, in the current climate of the world we live in, which is, there's some horrible stuff going on out there. And I think, we need to join forces with each other, be each other's advocate, really challenge each other to a higher level of living and delivering. And so, I absolutely love the opportunity to engage and speak to anybody who's got any questions.
Excellent. Well, Mark, thank you so much for your time today. It was wonderful getting to know you and some of your approaches to mentoring entrepreneurs.
Thank you, Mike.
You've been listening to Influential Entrepreneurs with Mike Saunders. To learn more about the resources mentioned on today's show or listen to past episodes, visit www.influentialentrepreneurssradio.com.